they come back. If they enter the moon orbit, they fire the retro rockets, they enter the orbit, and then fire again. As an example. Yeah, I mean, this is too close here for... Anyway, so this figure 8 is the least energy expensive technology. Trajectory. This strange trajectory with straight angles here is the most energy expensive technology. You can do that with a rocket, but you would need a fuel tank as big as the Queen Mary, or probably even bigger. I mean, maybe a giant fuel tank. I mean, it's impossible to do that with a rocket. This straight line trajectory here, this straight line, straight angle turn, this second sharp turn here, this another straight line turn here. This can be done only with a UFO. Only with a UFO, with an anti-gravity craft that controls the inertial mass and the gravity mass. It's hardly likely for a hoaxer to be that familiar with rocket mechanics in the 60s when this book was published for the first time in Mexico. This is the bigger Martian craft that landed there to help them. I don't know the details. And they spent a year on Mars. I'm sorry, 1 week on Mars. Very peaceful, loving society. Seas.
How long did it take to get to Mars?
A day and a half. It took them a day and a half to reach Mars. Because of the negation of the inertial mass, the flying saucer accelerates tremendously. People inside don't feel the G's, so you can reach tremendous speeds very quickly.
I'm confused because there's nothing lives on the moon and nothing lives on Mars.
This is what the party line says. I mean, the party line for many centuries has been claiming that the Earth is flat or that there is nothing beyond the Atlantic Ocean. Every new discovery has been covered up meticulously. Mountain passes in the Roman Empire were the biggest property. I mean, the most important information that was hidden by the public and the enemy armies. So were maritime straits and passageways. So were islands or continents later on. So are the physical conditions on the moon and all the other planetary bodies. According to contact stories, all the planets of our solar system are populated.
Yeah,
but
they don't have any oceans. They can't exist. It's
Uh,
impossible to exist without an ocean.
Well, we would see pretty soon. And let our eyes be the judge. Let forget about the party line and leave our eyes to decide whether the king is wearing clothes or not. We will do that pretty soon. Anyway, in that brilliant article, Conquest of Space by Harry Stein, Chief Navy Range Operations, White Sands Proving Grounds, probably a German with a changed name. He mentioned, this is from June 57, Mechanics Illustrated, he mentions that there are about 12 industry projects on anti-gravity, secret projects on anti-gravity, plus another dozen of research institutes involved in anti-gravity. Several of them in one company alone, busily working on anti-gravity. In 1957, this was the biggest, the hottest secret field that everybody was working on. Back again to some conspiratology. I have several examples from recent history. About the discrepancies between the actual reality and people's willingness to admit to the ugliness and monstrosity of that reality. In Germany in the 30s and 40s, it was very unfashionable to talk about strange places where people were detained and you couldn't get out, and basically, well, maybe there were some kind of recreational facilities with barbed wire, like these show window camps that they would show to the International Red Cross and visiting turncoat American and other intellectuals, like Jane Fonda's famous visit to the Hanoi Hilton prison for American pilots and so on. And even the wildest even the wildest rumors in Germany were thousands of times shorter than the actual ugly reality. After the war, it turned out that these were not 1, 2, or half a dozen facilities, but these were thousands of concentration camps. That there was no industrial facility without a concentration camp, and no concentration camp without an industrial facility. That this was free slave labor for the motherland, for the fatherland, for the fatherland. The same way as on the other side of the curtain, in the 60s, the editor of the Novy Mir literary magazine, which was the booster rocket for Solzhenitsyn coming to fame, he used to make small social surveys of his friends, asking them around the campfire, making sure that there are no KGB informers around. He would ask them, well, how many do you think people disappeared in the Stalinist camps? And the wildest estimate he could get was about 10,000 in 37, 38, the worst years of the Stalinist purges. After some time, Solzhenitsyn wrote his book, One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, which depicted from getting up in the morning until going to bed at night, one day in the life of a prisoner. And he had 5,763 days more to go. This is how the book ends. A horrific book, a brilliant work of literature. Solzhenitsyn is probably the biggest genius and literary genius living on the planet. He's been ignored and debunked by the American media and establishment because he dared do the unthinkable on his Harvard University 79 commencement speech. He dared to compare the Russian evil empire with the American evil empire and come to the same common denominator, that both of these evil empires were godless societies, materialistic godless societies, that were bound to perform the same feats of evil. After that, he was listed a non-person, and he has never been interviewed or on any major press after that. He ceased to exist for the American media. That was it. The Illuminati said, that's it. And nobody ever heard a word about Solzhenitsyn. After he published the book One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, and few others, people from all over the country started sending their personal histories, photographs, memoirs, family stories. He probably ended up with an archive that would fill in this room. And after titanic work of several years, he published the first volume of the Gulag Archipelago. After several more years came the first 6 volumes of the monumental 12-volume book. And so what happened? Slowly the whole world realized that from the 10,000 inmates that went to the camps, according to the estimates of the most dissident of the Russian intellectuals in the 60s, the actual figure was 60 million that went to the camps and 20 million did not come back. So this is another example of how much the ugly Illuminati reality outpaces our ability to comprehend it and to accept it. Because it's like literary works like Lord of the Flies. People have difficulty accepting this side of human nature, which reveals to us that our polished social or intellectual veneer is just a very thin layer over a very brutal, animalistic nature underneath. and that one needs only a small pressure from